the Ethiopian church took all of this literature, which included literature that nobody considered scripture at the time, and they appear to have just been non-discretionary and included everything.
The final words of an Ethiopian monk about Jesus Christ are raising questions no Western pulpit has been willing to answer. He spent 60 years inside a clifftop monastery in northern Ethiopia, sealed behind a single leather rope, guarding a manuscript older than most surviving copies of the New Testament.
This is a rare Ethiopian Orthodox Bible manuscript, handwritten in Ethiopia's sacred liturgical language, Ge'ez.
He never preached from it, he never quoted it, he never let it leave the room. Then, on the last night of his life, with the candle burning low and his disciples leaning in, he finally spoke the three teachings of Christ that nearly 2,000 years of institutional Christianity were built to bury. The old man on the cliff. Brother Johannes is the one holding the basin. He is 26. He has lived inside Debre Damo for 9 years, and in all of those years, he has never seen the old man's hands shake the way they are shaking now. Beside him, Deacon Michael, older, quieter, refuses to look directly at the manuscript open on the goatskin coverlet. The pages are vellum. The script is Ge'ez, Ethiopia's sacred language, the one the angels are said to speak. Abate's eyes are clouded with cataracts that have been thickening for a decade. His fingers are stained black at the tips from 60 years of dipping a reed pen into iron gall ink. He cannot read the page in front of him anymore. He does not need to. He has read this manuscript every single day since he was 31 years old. He knows it the way a heart knows its own beating. And the manuscript is not a copy of anything you have ever held. It is older than most surviving copies of the New Testament. It is one of perhaps 3 known volumes in the world, and what is written inside it is the reason a frail old man on a cliff in northern Ethiopia is, on the last night of his life, about to do something that 30 generations of monks before him refused to do. He is going to speak. Here is the thing most people raised in Western Christianity have never been told. Your Bible is not the whole Bible. The Western canon was locked at 66 books. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church preserved 81. The Book of Enoch, which roamed throughout, names 200 watcher angels who descended to Mount Hermon, took human wives, and produced the Nephilim. Samyaza, Azazel, Barakel, all of them named on the page. Rome cut it, Ethiopia kept it, but Enoch is not why Abadi is trembling on his deathbed. What Jesus really said. The book on the goatskin coverlet is called the Mashafa Kidan, the Book of the Covenant. And the man who has been guarding it for 60 years believes that what is written inside is the reason most of what the modern world calls Christianity is built on a teaching window that was almost completely erased. Look at what your Western Gospels actually give you. The 40 days between the resurrection and the ascension, the most important teaching window in the entire faith, is resolved in Luke in a handful of verses. Jesus appears, he blesses the disciples, he ascends. 40 days, 1 paragraph, no content. The single most consequential window in Christian history, and it was handed to you as a blank page. The Mashafa Kidan fills that page. According to the text Abate is opening tonight, the risen Christ did not return to comfort his disciples. He returned the way a commander pulls his officers into a room moments before the building collapses. He came back to warn them, and the first thing he said, the very first thing, was a line that should have been printed on the front cover of every Bible ever made. Do not build temples of stone, for the stone will crumble. Build the temple of the heart, for it is eternal. Read that carefully. He is not offering poetic inspiration. He is issuing a surgical warning against the very infrastructure that would later be built in his name. He goes further. He predicts men in long robes who would invoke his name to accumulate gold. He warns of a future empire that would seize his cross and use it as a weapon. Crusades, inquisitions, cathedrals funded on the backs of the poor. He tells his disciples plainly that the true believer must be a stranger to the systems of men. Brother Johannes hears the next sentence and goes still. If what you are feeling right now is the floor shifting underneath you, that is exactly what Abate felt the first time he read this passage at the age of 31. Subscribe now, because the next teaching he is about to whisper is the one the monks have always considered the most dangerous of the 3. It is the one that, if it had ever been printed and distributed across the Roman Empire, would have made every institutional church on earth structurally irrelevant overnight. And the reason it was buried will tell you more about how power actually works than any history class ever will. 2 Wens. He pauses. The candle flickers. Deacon Mikael leans closer. Abate begins to speak again. And what he describes next sounds less like theology and more like advanced internal medicine. Every human being, he says, has 2 winds moving through them at all times, the wind of life and the wind of error. The wind of error is not a vague idea of sin. It is a parasite, precise, methodical, with specific entry points. It enters through greed. It enters through the eyes when they look at what they should not. It enters through the mouth when it speaks deception. And once it takes hold, it does not simply make a person worse. It calcifies the heart. It hardens the inner architecture of a human being until they become what the text calls, without softening the language, a walking tomb. A person who wakes up, eats, performs, sleeps, rises again, but whose inner world has already gone cold. The walking tomb. That image has been sitting on this mountain for 2,000 years. Almost nobody outside these walls knows it exists. But here is the thing. After the diagnosis, Christ gives them the antidote. And the antidote is not a sacrament. It is not a ritual. It is not membership in any institution. He calls it knowledge. Direct, internal, personal knowledge of the truth that requires no intermediary, no priest, no bishop standing between a human being and the divine. He teaches them to observe their own thoughts the way a guard watches a city gate, alert to what enters, alert to what leaves. And then he says it. The kingdom of heaven is literally inside the human body, hidden in the silence between thoughts. If the average person in the Roman Empire had truly believed that, they would have stopped paying temple taxes. They would have stopped fearing excommunication. They would have stopped needing the machinery of religion to manage their relationship with the divine. They would have become, in the language of every empire that has ever existed, completely uncontrollable. This is why the Mashafa Kidan had to disappear. This is what Abate has spent 60 years making sure survived. But the most dangerous teaching, the one he has not said out loud yet, is still coming. The warning they buried. Brother Johannes asks the old man if he wants water. He shakes his head. His breath is shorter now. The candle is burning down faster than it should. He looks at the two of them, and he tells them what comes next is the line the monks have always protected most carefully. In the Mashafa Kidan, the risen Christ looks at his disciples, these men who have just watched him die and come back, and he says something that is not comfort and is not prophecy in the soft sense. The darkness will come, and it will wear my face, not a monster arriving in the night, not an obvious villain, a deception so precise, so architecturally sophisticated that it would look exactly like him. It would speak his name. It would carry his cross. It would build cathedrals in his honor. It would write his words on the inside covers of the very texts it would use to control people. And it would be the exact instrument of spiritual destruction that everything he had taught was designed to prevent. The Antichrist in this text is not a future tyrant on a throne. It is a system. It is an institution wearing the costume of the man it betrayed. And the monks of Debre Damo have believed for 2,000 years that this passage was not describing something coming. It was describing something already arrived. Abate has read those words 10,000 times, and tonight, finally, he believes the world has reached the moment they were written for. The Westerner who read it. There is one Westerner who has come close. His name is Jacques Mercier. He is a French ethnologist affiliated for decades with the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique in Paris. And in the late 1990s, he was the man Ethiopian authorities trusted to authenticate the Garima, Gospels, the illustrated Christian manuscripts, whose radiocarbon dating would later place them between 330 and 650 AD, some of the oldest illustrated Christian manuscripts ever found anywhere on Earth. While Europe stumbled through the Dark Ages, the monasteries of Ethiopia were sealed inside cliff fortresses, preserving the original architecture of the faith, untouched, unedited, unapproved by Rome. Mercier handled the Garima Gospels. He has spoken openly about the moment he first laid hands on them, the silence in the room, the trembling in his own fingers. The realization that the manuscripts in front of him predated almost everything he had been taught was authoritative. The Mashafakidan has only been read in fragments by a handful of Western scholars. Several of them have privately described the same physical reaction Mercier described with the Garima Gospels, a kind of vertigo, a sensation that the floor of everything they thought they knew was shifting underneath them. That sensation is what Abate has lived with every single day since 1965. He has built his entire life around it. And what he is about to tell Brother Johannes and Deacon Mikael in the next 40 minutes is not even the most dangerous thing in the room. The most dangerous thing in the room is what is buried in the dirt beneath them. The ark beneath the stone Ethiopia has insisted without wavering for 3,000 years that the Ark of the Covenant is here, locked inside the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in the ancient city of Axum, not as legend, not as metaphor, here, under guard, right now. The story is recorded in the Kebra Nagast, Ethiopia's royal chronicle. The Queen of Sheba travels to Jerusalem. She meets Solomon. She returns to Ethiopia carrying his son, Menelik I. When a grown Menelik later returns to visit his father, Solomon offers him the throne of Israel. Menelik refuses, but he does not leave empty-handed. He and his companions replace the ark in the Holy of Holies with a replica, and they carry the original back to Africa. Here is what the biblical accounts describe the ark doing. It incinerated armies. It struck people dead on contact when they touched it without authorization. It released fire that had no natural explanation. When scholars read those accounts not as mythology, but as technical description, the symptom profile sounds uncomfortably close to something emitting sustained radiation. And here is the part that is very difficult to dismiss. There is only ever one guardian at a time. He is chosen, he enters the chapel, he never leaves again for the rest of his life. Visitors who have observed the line of guardians across generations report the same pattern. Deteriorating eyesight, cataracts developing too early, skin that pales over time, death that arrives well before it should. These are not the symptoms of a life of prayer. These are the symptoms of chronic exposure to something that emits energy. If that object were just a wooden box covered in gold, none of this would happen. None of it. The Knights Templar traveled into Ethiopia in the 12th century specifically to find it, not as pilgrims, as hunters. Their carved symbols still exist inside the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela. They went home without it. Ethiopia, alone of every African nation, was never colonized. When Italy arrived in 1896 with modern weapons and the full backing of a European empire, they were destroyed at the Battle of Adwa. The churches that should not exist Abate has only ever seen Lalibela once in his life. He was 29. It is the memory he has returned to most often during his 60-year vigil, because Lalibela should not exist. King Lalibela did not build 11 churches. He carved them down into solid volcanic rock. Entire cathedrals, windows, doors, columns, interior chambers, sophisticated drainage systems, all cut from single continuous pieces of stone, not assembled, not constructed, excavated from the inside of a mountain. This is not a technique that allows for mistakes. There is no patching a cracked column in solid rock. Every dimension, every load-bearing decision, every interior chamber had to exist perfectly inside the mind of the architect before a single chisel touched the surface. Modern structural engineers have studied these buildings. Their conclusion is that to carve all 11 using 12th century tools would have required approximately 40,000 skilled workers working continuously for well over a century. The project is attributed to a window of about 24 years. The math does not work. And get this, the rock that was removed, millions of tons of volcanic material, is not there. No debris field, no quarry dump, no evidence at all of where it went. The stone was there. The churches are there. The stone is not. The monks have always given the same explanation. Human workers carve during the day. At night, the texts say, angels descended and continued the work, using what is described with strange specificity as tools of light that pass through solid rock without friction. That is not mythology. That is a description of directed energy. The most famous of the 11 is the Church of St. George, a perfect cross carved straight down into the earth until the roof sits flush with ground level. Beneath the entire complex runs a network of pitch-black tunnels where candidates for the priesthood are sent alone in complete darkness to navigate by touch and sound, chanting as they move. The theology of the Mashafa Kidan carved into the architecture itself. You must pass through the darkness before you are given the light. Three-dimensional laser scans recently revealed hollow chambers beneath the floors that have not been opened in 8 centuries. The priests describe them as the treasury of the saints, gold, manuscripts, possibly the very tools used in the original construction. No one has been given permission to open them. A bait knows what is inside. The bloodline they deleted. In Western Christianity, Jesus has no descendants. The story ends at the cross and resumes in heaven. His family line, if it existed at all, is treated as irrelevant or theologically impossible. In Ethiopia, that silence is culturally incomprehensible. Ethiopia's Solomonic dynasty ruled for nearly 3,000 years, from approximately 900 BC until 1974. One unbroken royal lineage. The last emperor, Haile Selassie, was the 225th ruler in that chain. His official title was the Conquering Lion of the Tribe of Judah, not a poetic honorific, a legal claim, a genealogical claim, a direct biological line traced back to King David himself. Here is the catch. That lineage does not just connect Ethiopia to the Old Testament. It creates a genealogical overlap with the New Testament that mainstream Western theology has no clean way to address. If Mary, the mother of Jesus, belonged to the house of David, and Ethiopia's royal dynasty traced the same bloodline for 3 millennia, then the relationship between Ethiopia and Christ was not theological. It was familial, literal, traceable biological family. Then modern genetics entered the conversation. DNA studies of Ethiopian populations have identified ancient genetic markers from the Levant, from the region of modern Israel and Syria, dating back roughly 3,000 years. Not mythological migration, biological migration, real people who left Jerusalem and settled in Ethiopia. The oral traditions, it turns out, were recorded inside the genome itself. This is also why Ethiopian Christianity looks so different from its Western counterpart. The Saturday Sabbath is kept. Circumcision on the 8th day is kept. Detailed Levitical dietary laws are kept. The Ethiopian church did not borrow Jewish practice. It never abandoned it. Which leads to the idea a bait believes is the most dangerous of all. If Jesus survived the crucifixion, and certain ancient texts suggest exactly this, quietly, without fanfare, and if he needed to disappear into a place that would guard him with their lives and ask no questions Rome could overhear, where would he go? Where better than a kingdom ruled by his own bloodline? In the remote Ethiopian highlands, oral traditions speak of a teacher who arrived from the north, a healer, a man whose manner of speaking was unlike anything the people had encountered. They do not call him Jesus, they call him the righteous teacher. No outside scholar has ever been able to explain who the righteous teacher was. A bait, eyes closed now, lips moving in J-ez, knows. Or he believes he knows. And the saying that has been passed down through the Ethiopian church for centuries carries the weight of people who know something the rest of the world has been told to forget. The West has the water. We have the well. Why now? Brother Johannes asks the question he has been afraid to ask all night. Why now? Why is a bot breaking 60 years of silence on this particular evening, in this particular room, with the candle burning low? The old man opens his eyes and the answer is in the text itself. The Mashafa Kidan describes the conditions of the end times using a phrase in Ge'ez that translates as directly as the language allows as webs of illusion, a world that is hyper-connected but fundamentally false, where people communicate without physical voices, where they see without physical eyes, where information travels faster than truth, and the manufactured image replaces lived reality. Tell me that does not describe the internet, social media, and the early architecture of artificial intelligence with a precision that should not be possible inside a text 2,000 years old. The theory held inside the Ethiopian monastic tradition is this. The monks were not simply preserving scripture, they were maintaining a timed release, an emergency document deliberately designed to be opened at a specific threshold moment in human history, when the conditions described in the Mashafa Kidan were unmistakably active in the world. The trigger was not a date, the trigger was a description. And get this, we are living inside that description right now. Trust in governments collapsed, trust in media collapsed, trust in organized religion declining at the fastest rate in modern recorded history. People are starving for something they cannot name, something direct, unmediated, that does not require an institution standing between them and the truth. The Council of Nicaea in 325 AD did not simply organize Christianity. According to the internal logic of the Ethiopian texts, it performed a targeted disarmament. The books that were removed were not cut because they were historically unreliable. They were cut because they described human beings as spiritually autonomous agents with direct access to the divine that required no priestly intermediary. By removing those books, the institution removed the reader's armor. Ethiopia never accepted that removal. Some passages of the Mashafa Kidan do not even read like theology. They read like physics. Researchers have identified language describing what modern acoustics would classify as resonant frequency manipulation, the use of precisely directed sound to alter the behavior of physical matter. Replace the word angels at Lalibela with advanced acoustic technology, and suddenly nothing about those 11 churches is structurally impossible. This is not a religious awakening. This is the return of a science that was buried deliberately by people who understood exactly what they were burying and exactly why. And tonight, on a cliff in northern Ethiopia, the man who has been guarding the last copy is running out of time. The last breath. The candle is almost gone. Brother Johannes can hear it now. The rattle in the old man's chest. Deacon Michael has tears in his eyes, and he is the kind of man who does not cry. Abate's hand is resting on the open page of the Mashafa Kidan. The ink-stained fingers do not move. He gathers what is left of his breath, and he tells them that the 3 teachings he has just transmitted are not theological curiosities. They are a survival kit, designed for exactly this moment. For people living inside manufactured realities, starving for something real. The first teaching. Do not build temples of stone, for the stone will crumble. Build the temple of the heart, for it is eternal. The institution cannot save you. The building cannot hold the divine. Go inward, or do not go at all. The second teaching. The kingdom of heaven is literally inside the human body, hidden in the silence between thoughts. The thing you have been searching for is not behind a paywall. It is not gatekept by a bishop or a denomination or a subscription to the correct belief system. It is inside you, in the place where thought stops and something else begins. The third teaching. The one he says last. The one he says quietly, as if the walls themselves have ears. The darkness will come, and it will wear my face. He tells them this is the teaching he has spent 60 years protecting. Not because it is the most mystical, because it is the most immediately useful. The entity Christ warned against, the deception that would speak his name and carry his cross, was not coming. It had already arrived, and the only protection against it was the first 2 teachings. Go inward, find the silence, and do not, under any circumstance, mistake the costume for the man. His breath catches. Brother Johannes reaches for his hand. Deacon Michael lowers his head and begins to chant in Ge'ez, the language the angels are said to speak. The candle gutters, hisses, and goes out. Abate dies on his manuscript at 3:40 in the morning. The room is dark except for the cold blue of the moon coming through the slit window of the cliff cell. His disciples have carried those words ever since. And tonight, for the first time, you have heard them. The West has the water. We have the well. And after 2,000 years of silence, the well is finally open. If those 3 teachings landed somewhere inside you, tell me which one in the comments. Was it the temple of the heart, the silence between thoughts, or the warning about the darkness wearing his face? Subscribe now, because Abate did not break 60 years of silence so the people who needed to hear him most would scroll past. What he protected goes far deeper than what we have covered tonight, and the next chapter is one most people will never be ready to hear.